You know how they say that history doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes? Well, one of our authors, you can't make it up, has a story that is rhyming with history so much that we could all hardly believe it as we talked about it today. Jessica Reddick wrote The Murder Mystery of Maddie McDuffie. It's a young adult novel, uh, very closely based on her experience coming of age in the 1960s. And, every once in a while you see a novel that's set in a different time and you think, I wonder if it'll really resonate and be relevant to the young people for today. But the young people today need this message so desperately. I hope you'll tune in and hear how this amazing book came into being and what the author hopes that every young person and old person who wants to take a walk down memory lane will glean from it. Enjoy. What if story is the answer to our crises of meaning and belonging, to our impulse to heal our lives and help others, to our desire and drive to leave this world better than we found it? Now, we love good stories. In fact, we're kind of obsessed, not just with the stories themselves, but with the stories behind the stories. Their oddly perfect timing, the healing process they provoke in their authors, and their capacity to catalyze individual and collective change. And we love exploring these with writers, thought leaders, entrepreneurs, healers, parents, and others. Tune in to hear these stories behind the stories and entertain with us the real possibility that whether you are a teller or a consumer, story is always offering or leading us to an answer. Hello and welcome to Sips of Story and Sanity, where we talk about the stories behind the stories with authors, speakers, thought leaders, healers, parents, and more. A few of my partners here at Saved by Story, my son Aaron and Lori and Carlin, are here to help me today to make sure we get the most delicious sips of story and sanity out of this experience. And today we have a special guest. Jessica Reddick is with us. Getting excited about her launch coming up. She was raised in a devout Catholic home on Bolenbacher Street in San Diego, California, and came of age during a precarious time in history. Nuclear bomb drills at school, public assassination of a beloved president, and the promise of the civil rights movement formed the collective backdrop against which she developed her friendships, her spirituality, her sense of meaning and purpose. In addition to being a devoted spiritual seeker, mother of two wonderful children, and Gma to two beautiful grandchildren, she's developed two creative passions she pursues full-time in her retirement: music and writing. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you.
So excited that you're here. I'm so
Glad to be
excited,
here.
so excited about this conversation because you can't make it up, right? This is something that we say all the time. And so
Yeah.
we're sitting here recording this after many, many months of working together. We worked together to take your story and make it even more exciting and powerful. And then we worked together through the publishing process.
Yes.
And as so many of our clients do, like, wow, this is such a big process and it takes so much time and it's so long. And then you just can't make it up that as we sit here recording this, our world looks so crazily similar to the one you grew up in.
Yeah. Chaotic.
Insane. I mean, even, all the talk about the nuclear stuff with Iran this week, and we've seen one of our presidents almost assassinated in the last year. I mean, talk about a really important time to bring your story to the world because there's so many young kids out there.
Innocence. Yeah.
Yeah, feeling the same way you did. So I want to know, I mean, it takes a long time. It takes a long time to write a book and to publish it. So will you share a little bit about when you started to think about writing this book? What was the inspiration?
The inspiration was my family and my community. Uh, the neighborhood I grew up in, and the bomb shelter that was in my backyard. So I always wrote about what I was fond of, which was my canyon that
Mhm.
I walked through to go to school, my friends in the neighborhood, my siblings, my sister, my brother, my father. There was just this unique place I grew up in a unique time. It was a scary time, but when you're in your community, there's times when you don't think about all the things that are going on in the world. I was in 63, I was 9 years old. And so what I thought about was my next report card, you know, who, who was I going to play with after school? Who was I going to spend the night with? And who I was going to gather in my den to watch all the scary movies on Mona Lisa.
Yeah.
That's where I was at 9.
So just one day you thought it would be really lovely to write a story about like based in my childhood. Where did you come up with the idea for a murder mystery? Where did that start?
Uh, I was writing my memoirs, and I thought, oh, this is good, but it needed something more exciting. And so I thought of a pair of boots. This is a true story, and there's boots on the cover.
Hmm.
Where I was coming home from school, and I had asked my mother for a pair of white go-go boots, but she felt like I was too young to have go-go boots. And I happened to see these brand new go-go boots, very nice, sticking out of a sewer opening. And I pulled them out. My friend was with me, my best friend. And she says, "You're going to get the cooties if you put those boots on your feet." And but they're practically brand new. So I took my sneakers off, put the boots on my feet, walked home, ran into my bedroom with the boots, stuck them in the closet, and I would wear them whenever I could. And that's how I often wondered why they were there. And so from there, I began to create a story.
Mm.
And that's how I came up with the murder mystery.
So the white boots belong
The
to the
white
first
boot
victim.
sort of prompted this story.
Wow.
Yeah.
Isn't that fun how that creative journey just happens? I just marvel at the process that we go through with these little nudges. I want to write my story. I grew up in cool times. I want to share that with my family, and then how it evolves into um, a completely different adventure, but
Yeah.
also so similar because you've done a really good job of setting the stage, for the setting of the 1960s, and kind of from that first scene, you feel like you're back there. You're in a different time,
Yes.
and it's really exciting. So, as you move through the writing process, tell us a little bit about that journey. It usually starts out pretty exciting, but what were some of the highs or even some of the lows through that process?
I don't think when I started writing, I had any highs or lows. The only thing I can remember is saying, uh, I'm not really a writer,
Mm.
but I was writing. I don't know how that fits together. And I wasn't really thinking about publishing it. I was just writing. And And I kept on writing. And I started to get uh, excited about the story through just, writing it. And when I put the dead body and all of that into the story, I got really excited because then it changed the course of the story. And it wasn't just my memoirs, but my remembering my childhood and then putting the dead body in the story just made the story just a little bit more exciting.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and I know we've talked about some of the um, some of the historical things that, is really fun when you're writing through a historical past and you go back and you think, oh, we went to this park, and then you think, oh, that park wasn't developed yet. When was that? What was the park that we went to, right? Because
Right.
the timeline is sort of funny and you don't remember that some things weren't exactly as remembered. But for you, what was that process like? Did you do any other research on the time, or did you just really take it from what you remembered?
Um, I took it from what I remembered. I also remember as a kid having political conversations. They weren't like brilliant conversations, but I think kids sit around the table and they listen to adults and the adults talk about who they're going to vote for. Uh, they talk about the candidates that are running for presidents, and we would go to school and we would say stuff. Well, yeah, my parents are voting for Kennedy. You know, I remember my mom sticking a sticker on my chest. I had a Kennedy sticker on my chest. Um, I knew who he was, and I knew that he was a good person because my family talked about him constantly. They talked about Martin Luther King. They talked about issues. Um, so I just remembered all those things. I know we weren't supposed to listen to adult conversations, but a lot of times we did. I mean, we loved listening to our parents talk about different things.
Yeah.
I remember being under the table and my mother had a bunch of girlfriends over and they were talking about somebody and somebody used the word doormat. And so my brother who's under the table says, "What's a doormat?" And my sister goes, "Well, that's somebody that's outside on the front door. You step on it and you uh so that you can get your shoes clean." And my brother said, "Well, why is mom calling her friend a doormat?" So, I mean, we had questions in our head about what some of the things that they were saying. And then we got ran out of the house. My mother would usually go, "Oh, go play on the freeway." I mean, that was her that was her little joke when we were listening when we weren't supposed to.
Isn't that interesting to think
Yeah.
about? I mean, I just love hearing about the time and kind of comparing it to what's happening now, because here you have a time where kids got in trouble for listening to the super adult conversation, and now they have access to all of the information on their phones at you know, just
Very
a little
young age. Yeah.
scroll.
Most kids get their cell phone at 10 years old,
Yeah.
sometimes 9. And it's also for safety, because parents need to know where their kids are.
Mhm.
So we do live in a different time. We had the telephone, and if you called, you couldn't call 911 because there wasn't a 911. There was the operator. So the operator actually patched you connected you to the police.
Wow.
So a lot of the stores that we used to go to, like Woolworths, I think it was Woolworth that had the diner that you could sit at and you could eat meatloaf and mashed potatoes and then go shopping.
So when you
So there's just a lot of antiques that no longer exist
Mhm.
uh, from that time.
when you think about how the young people are being raised today and how close they are to um, the news and the things that are going on, what comes up for you? What do you think about that, just based on how you grew up and how you lived? I remember hanging out with my grandmother. I had the opportunity to take care of her in her very later years, much older than you. And I just remember her hearing, Erin, do you remember her saying, like, she'd sit there and she'd watch the news and she'd say things like, I lived through the best decades, you know? And Erin and I would look at each other and be like, she's referring to the Depression, World War II, and you know what I mean? And it was
Yeah.
just this fascinating thing, but in comparison, she was sensing something else, like maybe a loss of something um, or something else happening that she felt like she couldn't adapt to. So, what's your experience right now? Because we do have this strange echo happening in our culture, and I'm just curious, how do you see it? How do you think about the way the kids are uh, being maybe not raised, but being exposed, let's say, to everything so early?
Um, I just think it comes along with the times that we live in. Um, things have changed so drastically. We have AI, we have kids that walk around with cell phones. You know, we just live in a more rapidly advanced time. Um, Back in my day, we things were just slower. Communication was slower. What did we have? We had the newspaper. We had, we had maybe three major out. We had NBC, ABC, and CBS, and we still have that, but it didn't seem like information came so rapidly um, the way it does now. So I think it's harder for kids than it was for us when I was growing up. We had I think about my characters, and I think about how they felt about finding the dead body and thinking that she was a person. She had a life
Mhm.
and she had a love. She may not have had a good family, but she had love in her life. She had high school. She was going to go to college. And she should have been safe in that canyon, but she wasn't. And here these two girls come and they say, uh, we're going to go and we're going to find justice for her because she was a person. She had a right to live. And so they stood 10 toes down, as they say in 2025. Uh, you know, we're going to make sure that she finds justice. And that's what we're doing right now. We want justice and we want equality for everybody else.
Mhm.
It's almost a parallel,
Mhm.
you know, from back then to 1963 to 2025. We're still seeking equality and justice.
Mhm. So you've mentioned the characters, these two girls. Did we, some of the funny things that happen as we're going through this process is trying to decide the age of the girls and these sorts of things. And it's like book titles. I get to the end and I'm like, what did we decide? I think they're 12 years old, right?
Yeah, so 12.
So they're 12 years old. This, kind of a confusing time, anyways, just biologically, right? Puberty starting to happen. You're starting to like see adulthood coming up. And so, I'd love for you to share a little bit about the inspiration for these characters because they're so unique and it's such a sweet friendship. I've even seen that in a lot of the endorsements that have come through about the book from early readers is there's just this like two people that you may not have seen necessarily getting along and yet they make quite the duo. So can you share a little bit about Jessica and Marina and what
Well,
inspired you?
Jessica is my personality. Growing up and being Catholic, um, and going to Catholic school, and some of the ideas that I had about God, uh, that also inspired my story. As a kid, I pretty much questioned everything in my own head because I wasn't allowed to express a lot of what I felt. Um, and My best friend at the time was a straight A student. I wasn't. Um, she was, she would do the spelling bees, and I would go, and I would sit there and go, I wish I could spell. I mean, we were complete opposites. But I had what I think I had is I had my own faith and my own ideas about God. And so I just built my character from that. And then my best friend, who was practical and logical, and I was more intuitive. This is what I feel, this is what I see. I believed in the invisible. So I talked about it. And she would listen. And even back then, I remember her just looking at me and shaking her head, like, because she was such a logical person. She would she would be in church with her Nancy Drew book, and she would be reading it, where I would be paying attention. She wasn't. I
Yeah.
would be in such a, I would be paying so much attention, you couldn't get my attention. So that's how we were. That was the dynamics between us. And so that helped me write the story. Just our personalities. They were so different,
Yeah.
but we were good friends.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. And good. And that's the thing that I love, anyone who anyone who spends any time in a workshop or a writing quest will inevitably hear me talk about some of the great stories that I love. And the ones that I love the most are the ones like Lord of the Rings, not because it's Middle Earth and it's all these strange creatures, but because there's this understanding that we need each other. We need each other's superpowers. We have these strengths and then we also have these shadows. We have these weaknesses. And the only way to get to the end of the journey is to work together and figure out how to leverage everyone's strengths. And so that's one of the things I love the most about this book is that they're so different and yet um
they work together.
they work together and they do it with such childlike curiosity. I think you found that window of 11 or 12 right before they start making decisions, like
Right.
about the world. And like they're still curious, like what makes these people tick? And why is this person on the corner kind of quiet? And they're trying to understand the world um, in a really sweet way together. And and your story proves again that without both of them a murder wouldn't have been solved, not only would they probably not have had the such a fun friendship and gotten into trouble the way they did, but they had this they achieved their goals because they had all of those superpowers at play.
Yeah, they had the tenacity, the wherewithal, the defiance, because they were told to
Mhm.
go home and be kids,
Yeah.
um, by their parents often and by the uncle in the story. And they just at every turn, they would just defy all of that. We're gonna figure this out, and they figure it out.
Yeah. Were you like that as a kid? Were you writing from your own?
I was, there were some things that I was defiant about, only because as being growing up Black and being in a Catholic school and sometimes bullied,
Mhm.
I had to be.
Yeah.
And so I was like that. But I was also very, very shy, and in my own head most of the time. There is a very personal story about how I felt. I remember a bird got caught into the statue, the saint statue that was on the side of the church. And I'm not going to say what saint it is because I don't want to say the name of the school. But you, when you read the book, you'll get the name. Uh, and it was dangling and it was flipping back and forth and it was bleeding. And I remember standing there going, all she has to do is open up her hands. And I'm waiting and waiting because I've seen so many Catholic movies. And I think I was probably the only one paying attention. Most everybody else was asleep. And so I'm standing there and I'm waiting, and the nun goes and she gets this long pole with a hook and she tries to get the bird out of the praying hands. And the next thing I know, the bird is on the ground. Um, and I thought, wow. And this saint is the patron saint of abused women.
Mm.
So it's kind of ironic that the bird did not survive. So I remember going home and telling my mom, I was like, all she had to do was open up her hands. And my mother's looking at me like, what did I do? Later on, she would apologize for sending us to Catholic school. But yeah, that was me in a nutshell.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that though, that the stories are what gave you faith. That story reminds me of when Aaron told me that he was really sad because his best friend didn't get his letter from Hogwarts. And I and we were driving home and I just remember thinking, uh-oh, like
I'm not alone.
the stories impact us, right? Like that's what stories are for, to build our faith and to make us see beyond what we can see. So I love that, such a great story. So I know Lori had the opportunity to read your book. Lori, do you have any questions burning after listening to her share a little bit?
Well, first of all, I just wanted to say um, that was the time frame that I grew up in too. So, Jessica, I remember Woolworths. I remember my grandmother taking me for a soda or lunch before we would do shopping. I remember those those details. I love that the kids were on bikes. that they rode bikes at certain points in time, and that was their transportation, how they got around, because it was just a different world then. We were free to ride our bikes and to take them downtown or to go places, and I love that. But what I really love is just the whole adventure, because I love adventure and the tenacity that the girls had. And I'm trying to remember because it's been a while since I read the book, because I was one of the first
Readers.
first ones to do that. Um, but wasn't it an uncle that was on the police department?
Yes.
Okay. And I love that the family was included as part of your story. Like it wasn't just the girl and her friend, but she had somebody she felt she could confide in and was a confidant. And even though kids were to be seen and not heard in that day
Right.
and time, I love how your character just stood up for what she believed in. And um, okay, for me, I would have been scared to death to go knock on that trailer door knowing there might be this certain person in there.
Yes.
So I want to know, did you have that kind of tenacity? Would you have really like walked up and knocked on that door if that had been a real situation?
Um, I doubt that. But that trailer park, we used to walk through, and a lot of times we'd end up getting chased out.
Oh,
Yeah. So it wasn't that trailer park never had a good memory for me. Um, it got to a point where, okay, we're not going to go this way. We're just going to, uh, and I don't know why we really never had to go through the trailer park, but we would just go through it. And me, my sister, and my brother on the way home would just walk through it, and because that fascinated us.
it's kind of
Uh,
like walking through like kids walk through a graveyard.
yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of that's kind of the feeling I got.
Yes, and you would think that we would go, oh, maybe we shouldn't because we've been chased out like 3 or 4 times. And then finally about the fourth time we decided, okay, we're not going to go through here. It's just not worth it. So
Right.
that's my memory of the trailer park. And that's why I probably, made our characters go and ask the questions in spite of what they kind of knew they were going to experience something because Jessica's friend Marty wanted to go with them, and he does because he feels
Yeah.
like he needs to make them safe.
Right.
Because his mother says, well, those people over there have arrest records. And they just, blindly go and ask the questions,
Mhm.
Yeah, I love that they
regardless
just took.
of the circumstances
Yeah. Yeah.
that
I
may
love that
occur.
childlike innocence of
Mhm.
just not afraid. Like, I have a question and I want an answer to it.
Mhm.
And so let's just go ask. I love that about them. I love the uncle too and how he his part in that, with working with the kids. And I don't want to give anything away, but I love how he worked with the kids and listened to them. Because kids didn't always get listened to in that day and age. We kind of got brushed off to the side a little bit. So
Yeah.
anyway, I think you've done a great job. I'm super excited
Thank,
for the book to come out for you, and it was a great read. I
thank
loved it.
Yeah. Carlin, were you a Nancy Drew girl? I know you've been an avid reader. Were you like a mystery reader?
Yeah, and same. I had a neighbor named Kelly. And gosh, as I'm sitting here listening to you talk, Jessica, about your friend growing up and yourself, I'm like, oh, this sounds like Kelly and I. Like, I was the one that was a little bit more logical and not defiant. Like you were saying, Lori, I would have been like way too afraid to. take those kind of risks. But my friend Kelly, she would just go run on out and do what she was going to do. And we read the Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys mysteries together. Those were really fun.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
were.
yeah. Just even listening to all this, because I also grew up in California, and long before there was um, call waiting, and I mean even things like that, right? Like if you wanted to call somebody and they didn't pick up, then you just had to wait and call them back later. Things were so much slower.
But you
And
remember the party lines, though.
oh yeah,
That made the
yeah,
telephone very interesting.
it did. Like, wait, who's listening? Like, who am I talking to? I can't remember who was on here before. Did I say something about somebody?
Right.
I feel listening. But just it's just giving me all this like kind of nostalgic memories of riding bikes and finding the shortcuts through the parks and the canyons. And oh my God, my dad said the same thing, like go play on the freeway. We had that one. So I just love the remembering the adventures of childhood and early adolescence and sneaking around and getting in trouble. And always, like, I always wanted Kelly to go first because I was afraid if I would be the first one to get caught, I'd get in trouble. And I usually did get in trouble. But just, I love the idea of that you've kind of put that back out into something for other people to enjoy and kind of reminisce about and uh,
Yeah, especially baby boomers.
remember.
They can remember all of
Yeah.
that, where you could play till 12 o'clock at night
Oh,
in the
yeah.
park, and your
Yep.
parents sort of let you. You could walk.
Yeah.
There was a 7-Eleven at the bottom of the hill that we would walk to, and we would walk there at night, and we would
Yep.
walk through the canyon, and nobody worried about anything.
Oh, yeah. I remember all that. So different now.
Yeah, you can't do it. You can't allow your kids. You got to watch them in the front yard.
Yeah.
That makes me wonder what Aaron's experience of this is, hearing about these days of growing up in such a different, I mean, we were near a bunch of dairies when you were growing up, but I had that we were already in the time where it was like, nah, I'm not comfortable with you riding your bike out there alone. I'm not, right? Like it was that starting to have that feeling that those times had passed. So I'm curious what comes up for you listening to all of this.
For sure. Well, and also just thinking like there were no mysteries for me. Like there was no like you know when you call someone you have to wait, you have to sit in not knowing or not, waiting to hear back and having to be patient and I mean pretty early on that you have a cell phone, you have answers and right at your fingertips, you can text someone if they don't get right. So there was no definitely a bigger lack of uncertainty in some ways for my generation, right? And no, and it, instant answers. So there isn't as much fun and play and like the curiosity of something, right? And the only place that I got that it was in a very select few classrooms where the teacher kind of set up an activity that way with that approach. So yeah, very different.
To make you want to find a place where you can go ride bikes with friends.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Not right now. It's like 111, but you know,
Different place, a
absolutely.
cooler place.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a little bit more of that when we moved into the more forested areas, right? We kind of got a little bit more of that experience of being able to just go out and explore and um so yeah, it's a very special um opportunity, I think, for young people to enjoy a great adventure, with the murder mystery, solve the murder mystery, try to figure it out, see these two girls just, using their strengths together to make this happen. But also, I am excited to hear from the older folks who are like, God, I remember those times. I kind of want to go back and experience that in this book and have an opportunity to um like relive the great parts of that. So, have you had feedback from readers who are feeling pretty nostalgic about that time?
Yes,
Yeah.
I've had several people tell me that they just started having like floods of memories about their own childhood and, the things that they did, and it was much, they realized it was a much more freeing time
Mm,
because you didn't have the constraints of, what, like we have now, we got to make sure we pick our kids up from school. They can't walk home. If they do walk home, they need to walk home with a bunch of kids, but who even does that now? Because you want to make sure that your kids get home.
mm,
It's so different. I mean, we walked home and there was no thought about anything happening. It was just so innocent.
mhm. Yeah.
And when something did happen, oh, it was a big deal. People still got murdered, but not like they do now.
Mm, yeah. So, will this be the last adventure for Jessica and Marina, or do you see them having another adventure or mystery to solve in the future?
I am so ready to write the next adventure. I see them also. I see them with the respect from the San Diego PD. I see them, having that respect and more challenging cases.
Excellent. I
Yeah.
love it. Well, do we have any final questions for Jessica? Any final questions? All right, Jessica, you've done an amazing job with this book. So excited to see it get into the hands of young
Thank you.
and old and
Mhm.
everyone in between because you've done such a good job capturing the most important parts of story, the conflict, the characters develop across time and how they work together and it's just a really beautiful coming of age story. So congratulations. And we're excited to see this go out into the world. Where can people follow you? Where can they kind of stay in touch with you and make sure that they hear about when the book is launched and continue to follow along for these next adventures for Jessica and Marina?
They can go to my landing page, which is www, bolenbachermysteries.com. They can go to my Instagram, which is Bolenbacher Street Mysteries. And they can also go to my Facebook, which is Bolenbacher Street Mysteries.
Excellent. Yeah, go get on the list. You get those reminders when the book launches, and you get to hang out on the journey with Jessica and Marina. So, thank you so much for
Thank you. And I want to thank Saved
with
by
us today.
Story,
Yeah,
who got me really going and excited. And I truly love the editing process. That was amazing. The
wow.
back and forth, the churning of ideas. It was just simply amazing. I love that part of it.
Well, good. I'm
Definitely made the book the best that it can be.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Congratulations. And for those of you who are listening, thanks for hanging out with us for a little bit. Make sure that you go and follow Jessica at Bolenbacher Mysteries. And we'd love to hear from you too. Leave a comment below, share the episode with other moms who are looking for good mysteries for their kids and maybe even some of the older people in your life who just need a really good roll down memory lane. It's a great opportunity to do that. So, with that, I think we've got a wrap. Bye.
Bye.